Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the upcoming federal election in Australia, but also some of the issues in and around the election and issues that I think should be issues but are not getting talked about. And there's almost like a conspiracy between all the major or all the bigger parties where they only talk about the globalist scripted talking points and only allowed to say what the globalists tell them they can say. The smaller parties that don't have as much money and a much smaller presence, they're the ones talking about the issues that people really care about. But it remains to be seen as to whether or not they do any good in the election. So needless to say, the media, or the mainstream media, are going up and call all these smaller parties, fascists and Nazis and Hitler, and the normal stuff. Just call them names, and all you have to do is say, well, I think immigration should be restricted to people who have real skills and can talk English, for example. That's it, Hitler, and that the media just go insane and they denigrate these people as being fascists and Nazis and Hitler and so on. Anyway, my view is that these politicians are standing for election and are there to represent Australia and the people that live here in Australia. They're not here to represent masses of black and brown peasants in Africa or India or something like that. They're here to represent the people in Australia. And that seems to be something that the globalists have decided no Western politicians are allowed to do anymore. And of course, our politicians tamely roll over and accept a couple of waterfront properties and cozy jobs for their wives and children and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's all right. I'll sell out my country and my fellow citizens. Not a problem. And that's all across the Western world, of course. Now, there are varying degrees of keenness to sell out. Some aren't very keen to sell out their fellow citizens. Some are a bit more enthusiastic about it, but the end result is the same, pretty much. Now, the two major parties in Australia, there's the what are called the Liberal Party in Australia, and they're in coalition with a party that's called the National Party, but really they represent the more rural areas of the nation, the farmers and the smaller farming towns and regional towns, that sort of thing. Now, the Liberal Party is really an approximation of the Republicans. They're liberal in the classic sense of believing in personal freedom, not liberal in the sense of handing out, being generous with welfare or anything like that. Oh, they've become so, but they're meant to be the centre-right party. Now, the Labor Party in Australia is the equivalent of the Democrats, roughly approximately the equivalent of the Democrats, and they're the kind of the centre-left party. In the before the mid-1980s, there was quite a divide between the two parties. The Labor Party, that is the Democrats' sort of approximation, they were further left than they are today, particularly on economic policy. And the Liberals, again, the approximation of the Republicans, or the Tories in England, they were more to the right than they are now. But both of them have shifted in the centre, really because they both represent globalist policies. That's really it. They've got no policies of their own. They just do straight globalist policies. Maybe they pursue some with more eagerness than others, like the Labor Party will be pursue more keenly things like transgender bathrooms, or they'll have more propaganda that women are oppressed class that need big, hairy-chested He-Man government to step in to save them. Whereas the other side may not be as enthusiastic about that, but may still do it. So there's within a range, and it's a fairly narrow range. There are some differences, not in policy, but in the extent and the eagerness and the energy they put into pursuing this or that policy. The Democrat equivalent in Australia, for example, are keener on pushing the climate change catastrophe stuff, whereas the other side is still pursues it, but not with the same keenness. So anyway, there are none that I can see, at least, no local policies now. But there are some real issues to talk about, and one of them is economic. And For example, and this is a pet peeve of mine, so you've heard me talk about it before. If you look at the best paid jobs in Australia, and this is an indication of where the money's being spent, where the investment is, where the better paid jobs going, where are the opportunities for young people coming through, that sort of thing. So if you look at the top paying jobs in Australia, the majority of them are, by quite a long stretch, by the way, the majority of them are government jobs. So working for the government now gives you a higher and better and more reliable and stable income than pretty much any other form of employment. So the government at the upper end, this is. So if you want a well-paid job, government is now. At the private sector, no. Now, any vibrant economy that's creating new wealth will have a much bigger private sector in terms of the better paid jobs and indeed job opportunities. But it's the reverse now. It's the absolute reverse. So number one is government jobs. Number two is NGOs. So NGOs now have the second most best pay in terms of overall numbers. The second are now second behind government in terms of the amount of well-paid jobs that they offer or are available within at least the Australian economy. Third is charities and quangos, which you could kind of lump in, I guess, with the other two, but looking at it as a separate. So that's number three. The fourth biggest category, or really the last category, the lowest category, is business. Business has fewer well-paid jobs than any of those other three categories. Now, maybe it'll change, but this trend has been going on now for some years, since the globalists effectively took over the Australian major political parties. There's been an ongoing downward trend. There are fewer and fewer private sector well-paying jobs in the Australian economy. Now, I don't need to spell it out. What this means is the Australian economy is becoming poorer. It is relying completely on tax revenues and borrowings from overseas. It is not creating the wealth. Is not creating the wealth in Australia, or through the private sector rather, in Australia, to generate the sort of standard of living that Westerners are used to. And meanwhile, the government brings in, again under the instruction of the globalists, brings in masses of brown and black peasants and into the country that produce and create nothing. It's an absolute drag. This idea they're adding value is bullshit. There'd be a small handful, out of the 200 to 300,000, depending on which year, of immigrants that are brought in. You'd be lucky if 10 to 15,000 of them actually had skills that were needed in the economy. It's no good saying, well, we'll stop training doctors. We'll stop training white doctors. Oh, gee whiz, we don't have enough doctors. Let's bring in doctors from fucking Bangladesh or something like that. That's idiotic. It's absolutely idiotic. Why not train the doctors here as we always used to? If the doctors are better qualified from Bangladesh or something, and there are genuine shortages, sure, bring people in who've got those internationally recognised skills and competencies. Nothing wrong with that. If there is a genuine shortage, not an artificially created shortage, but a genuine shortage. So we've got that of the economy. And no one's talking about this. It should be an absolute headline. Private sector cannot produce or create as many well-paid jobs as fucking NGOs are doing it. The NGOs produce more well-paid jobs in this country than the private sector does. It's insane. It should be across all the front pages. Now, in terms of other issues that aren't getting talked about, there is a monumental housing bubble in Australia, as there are indeed in other Western countries. It's not completely unique to Australia. Now, this is created in part, or primarily, I should say, because Australia has allowed international real estate speculators to come in and buy up swathes of real estate. One Chinese Communist Party goon with lots of money in his pocket to burn, or to launder, I should say, can buy 200 or 300 or 400 houses. And you don't need that many of them, just a few thousand of them, and that is radically going to tilt the market. You add to that Indian Brahmins and people from all over the place are allowed to come in and just play money laundering games in the country's real estate. And I've been to auctions, housing auctions, residential real estate housing auctions, where there is not a single, not one white person bidding on the properties, not one. And you go from auction to auction to auction, there's not one white person bidding on it. And if you do see one, which is rare enough, there people have got ordinary jobs, ordinary 9 to 5 jobs, sort of the mum, the dad, and maybe they've got a young child or something like that. And they've got their income that they have to live within, and they can only afford a certain amount. And you see the utter dismay on their faces when all the other people there who don't have 9 to 5 jobs. They don't do that. They're not locals. They're just international speculators, and they just bid the price of the real estate up to double what was expected, or much higher than what was expected. And you can see that they got no chance, those people. And this is what our government, both parties permit and allow to happen, and it drives down the standard of living of Australians to the point where only certainly in the big cities, 1 or 2% of the population have an income that can allow them to purchase a middle class lifestyle in the bigger cities such as Sydney. Now these are serious issues, and it's not just a casual cost of living issue here of the price of food and groceries has gone up or something like that. This is one of the biggest. The price in terms of purchasing power, the price of real estate has gone up more than 3 times faster than wages over the last 50 years. And if you look at the price of energy, that's like 130, in fact more now, given the recent price rises. That's between 130 and 160% more expensive. Food is now 30 to 40% more expensive than it was in purchasing power terms. This is all reducing the standard of living of Australians to a point where those that can participate in the economy, as in lead the middle class lifestyle, have children, and have an investment in the future, is dwindling and dwindling. And there's hardly anyone who can do it. There's more people from overseas, rich property speculators, that own property in Australia than the local fucking Australians do. That's how insane it is at the moment. But is any government even talking about it or going to do anything about it? No one's talking about it. And so the big issues are just not being talked about because it's not part of the globalist script. Energy is a case in point here, where because there's so much investment by the elites in alternative energy, which is simply not viable. The alternative energy cannot compete with. Now, one day the technology will be there. Now, why we can't wait for that day is beyond me. But anyway, the elites have invested big money in alternative energy. It hasn't come to pass as they wanted. They now want to rig the market to make sure they get a big fucking payout. And they control a lot of what goes on in the stock market. They control a lot of what goes on in real estate pricing. So they just think they can casually demand that their investment be artificially fixed and rigged, so it produces windfall returns on their investments. Well, they've invested in alternative energy. It doesn't work, or certainly doesn't work anywhere near well enough or well as it needs to. So they can damn well fucking wait until they make their money back. They've made a dumbass investment. Too fucking bad. They can wait until the technology catches up with their dreamy aspirations. And the government of the people should be telling them that. So screw your fucking investment plans. The price of energy will be as cheap as it possibly can for the people that we represent and that elect us into parliament. You can call it populist if you want, but that's bullshit. They are there to represent the people. That's it. That's their job. And Australians. Now, also on the immigration thing, there's lots of stories going around at the moment, and the government propaganda machine, or the entire political establishment propaganda machine, is running overtime, that there's skills shortage, there's not enough skills. Oh no, unemployment's so low. Where are these skills? The economy can't grow without these skills. So shall we train people locally? No, fuck off. We're not going to train people. Well, shall we look at all the many people who are underemployed, who could do much more work and much more complex work. No, fuck them. No, they. Well, what about people who say have pensioners who've retired and they're still really fit and they can still work, but they don't want to work because as soon as they do an hour or two of work, they lose their pension. Can't we have some system where they can, work maybe part-time, I don't know, 10, 15 hours, 16, 20 hours a week or something, and they lose only part of their pension. And so it's not like a hammer blow to their benefits or something. Nah, fuck off. Those pensioners can shove it up their ass. So what are we going to do? Bring in black and brown illiterate fucking peasants with no qualifications that can't speak English. That's how we solve the skills shortage. Well, exactly what skills shortage are they talking about? Washing dishes, pushing a broom. Exactly what are these skills shortages? No one seems to know. No one seems to be able to talk about it. So these are the big issues that really concern Australians, and no political party is prepared to talk about it or deal with it or do anything about it. And if you do ask questions about it or raise these things, there is an absolute avalanche of media and all sorts of public commentators online that are ready to say, Hitler! If you want to train local people, someone go, you're Hitler! I mean, it's absolutely insane. But it's the globalist project. It's happening all over the Western world, and I'm hoping like hell here that some of these smaller parties that do care about Australia and care about the things that Australians care about get up at the election and give those major globalist controlled parties a real shock. You've been with Tastus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.